Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. It's Tony here from eunyxus. So obviously we've been watching Hurricane Melissa over the past few days. Although it's way off up to the north now, it has done some serious damage along its tour of the Caribbean. I would argue that what's coming next is probably going to be a lot worse than the storm itself. I know the storm itself was horrendous. It was a very, very powerful storm, but what the challenges are now are definitely going to be very, very difficult to deal with for various different reasons, and I'll go into that. We'll dig into it a little bit. Just a quick recap then on Hurricane Melissa. So it was quite an interesting development of how it reached landfall. It was expected to move into Jamaica a bit further east than what it actually did. It held off out at sea. It was tracking west a little bit, 1 or 2 miles an hour, and then it came up and directly hit the western side of the island. You could say it's a bit of a silver lining, because in the east of the island is where obviously Kingston is located, and that is where the majority of the population are. However, the people in the west got it really bad, and it's been massively affected by the storm. The population is now at risk of various other things, and as risk management advisors, we start to think, okay, so what's next, and what do we have to do? What do we have to start thinking about? And again, it's something that we're going to dissect a little bit on this video. So the central pressure at landfall was 892 millibars, which is a tied record low for the Atlantic region. It was an extremely strong hurricane and the strongest hurricane to strike Jamaica in logged history, and that history goes all the way back to 1851. The eye of the hurricane was also the driest on the books, which is just a reflection of how powerful this thing actually was. It wasn't the largest hurricane to ever bless the Caribbean, if you want to say that, but it was definitely one that packed a punch. Max sustained wind speeds of 185 mile an hour, gusting over 200 mile an hour in mountainous regions. So it was definitely a Cat 5 on landfall. The eye did fall apart a little bit, so when it did cross over Jamaica, it did lose a lot of its energy, but then another eye was formed when it got back out to sea, and that meant it hit Cuba at about category 3, category 4, something like that. Still a very, very powerful storm. The storm surge and the rainfall was a big issue. So the storm surge, which is where the sea levels rise and it moves inland, they were between 9 and 13 feet, or if you're in the UK or anywhere that uses meters, that's between 2.7 and 4 meters. To put that into a little bit of a perspective, in the UK, when we look at a floor in a building, we typically have a general rule of thumb of that floor being 3 meters tall. So if you think that these storm surges were up to 4 meters, you know, that's a hell of a storm surge. That's a lot of water coming your way. Rainfall then, that was between 15 and 30 inches, and it went up to 40 inches of rainfall in the mountainous region. So again, that's an awful lot of water going on a relatively small island, which has definitely had an effect and it's caused landslides and whatnot. Haiti and eastern Cuba have also sustained devastating effects, both requiring international aid. I think Marco Rubio has said that the US is offering Cuba international aid, and I think when it comes to a humanitarian crisis like this, it's the right thing to do, especially when some of these countries don't have the finances or the infrastructure or the assets to be able to recover quickly. So a quick BDA, or battle damage assessment. Hurricane Melissa caused unprecedented devastation in Jamaica, described by officials as levels never seen before, and affecting over 1 million people, which is about 1/3 of the population. Western and southern parishes like St Elizabeth, which is known as Jamaica's breadbasket, were the hardest hit, which is obviously then going to cause an issue with food, etc., which we'll talk about in a moment. And the storm carved through agricultural heartlands and tourist areas such as Montego Bay. Montego Bay pretty much took a direct hit. and I think Ocho Rios is up there as well, which is another tourist hotspot. Landslides and blocked roads are present throughout the island, so getting about is restricted. That's obviously going to have a massive impact on getting aid, meds, supplies and infrastructure to remote parts of the island. 90% of the structures in Western Jamaica sustained either major damage or complete structural failure, and that's things like roofs going missing, entire communities swept away due to flash flooding, etc. Over 160 homes have also suffered similar effects in Haiti, and medical supplies or facilities have been completely destroyed. So that's a huge impact, and it's going to cause a lot of problems that people might not have thought about, and we're going to cover that off too. The island is currently experiencing widespread power outages, and 77% of the island is without power. There is collapsed roads and bridges, the airports are flooded, internet and data capabilities are currently running at around 30%. Elon Musk, what a legend, he has switched on Starlink for free for the affected communities and islands in the Caribbean for those who do have a Starlink terminal, which is great. I use Starlink and it is so good. It's reliable, it's fast, and I really think that Starlink here is going to be a bit of a saving grace, especially for communications between international aid teams and on the island itself. So brilliant. Tip my hat to you, Elon. Well done. 4 major hospitals in Jamaica have also been damaged. Moving on then to the agriculture and economy, it's been completely wiped out. This is going to cause issues, obviously, with food security. As we said, Jamaica's breadbasket is taking a huge impact. So food is going to be non-existent for a little while, I would imagine. However, there is food coming in by air from international aid. The economy is now in a bad way. Obviously, tourism is going to be impacted for the foreseeable, and that makes up most of Jamaica's GDP. So what we're looking at now then is probably recession, undoubtedly, unemployment and banking stress. Preliminary reports are suggesting that this hurricane is going to cost in the region of $22 billion, and recovery is going to take more than a decade. It's made even more difficult, as we know, because the island is not all that wealthy. Immediate challenges in financing may be due to the strained public borrowing. However, catastrophe bonds, which is about 150 million by the looks of it, is likely to have already been issued from the World Banking Facility to kickstart recovery. So thinking about the people then, as it stands, people are unaccounted for. Some reports say it's as little as 5. Others are saying it's thousands. We don't really know. There have been deaths reported across the region, but I can't get an accurate figure on that. We're only a couple of days after the event. I'm sure we'll get updates in the news over the coming days and weeks. There are 25,000 international tourists still to be evacuated, but they have all been accounted for, so that's good. If anyone's got any family members in Jamaica on holiday, they are all accounted for, if you're worried. So what's next then? So as with anything like this, the initial hazard, i.e. the hurricane, has passed, but there is still a lot of threats that persist and are currently present. Basics such as water and food are going to be limited in quantities and difficult to get hold of in the short term. I do have faith in the Jamaicans though. They're a robust bunch. I saw a lot of videos before the hurricane hit, and they were kind of just getting on with it, tying their boats up, boarding up their houses and stuff like that. And I really hope the people that decided to stay in Jamaica, whether that's through choice or they didn't have a choice, hopefully, you know, they're resilient enough to pick a fishing rod up, get out, start getting food. If possible, I know the place has suffered some serious flooding and whatnot, and the food's not going to be easy to come by, nor is clean water. But, you know, hopefully if the boats are still there, they can get out, grab some fish. At least it's a good source of protein, and they can start feeding themselves. I really hope that's the case for those guys in the smaller communities in the West. Infrastructure. Western areas are going to see bigger impact than the rest of the country. It's more rural, it's harder to get to, and that is what took the direct hit. So power, things like that. We're looking at weeks or months to get that back online. As we said, 77% of the country is without power. Roads and bridges, as we mentioned, days to weeks we're looking at for major routes, and then months for remote access before that's all back online. Comms, well, we've got Starlink up and running, so we've got some comms in country. However, it's only a partial restoration, and that will hopefully be restored in the coming days. Without comms, we're stuck, so it's one of the first things that we need to get done. Airports, then, we're looking at 1 to 3 days for relief flights. I believe they're already going in. I think USAID and DART are already going in from the States with loads of aid and stuff like that. So I think the airports are open for humanitarian purposes. Maybe they might start airdropping. Who knows? I think there might be some deployment of helicopters potentially, but I don't know what the plan for air is this far, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. And they're looking about a week for commercial operations to start kicking in, getting tourists home and whatnot. Water and sanitisation is going to be weeks. Contamination risks are extremely high, and it's probably one of our now highest risks in country, because that leads on to disease and stuff like that. And obviously we've got the health side of things with probably limited, no food and no clean drinking water. So international aid, we've mentioned it a little bit. The US, as I said, we've got USAID and DART teams responding to the entire region. They're going to Jamaica, Haiti, Bahamas. And I think Miami Heat and Carnival have donated $1 million. And obviously Starlink is free for the region, which is great. The UN, United Nations, and the WFP, they've got 800 metric tons for Haiti and Jamaica. Hygiene and shelter kits, generators, cash, logistics coordination, and UNICEF are also inbound to take care of the kids. The Red Cross is mobilising shelters, psychosocial support and other supplies. I know that doesn't sound like much, guys, but the psychosocial stuff after a crisis or during crisis it's more important than what you think, because the mental health side of things we've got to think about, and that's going to have taken a massive knock, and it will continue to do so over the coming weeks and months. So fair play, Red Cross. So we've also got other NGOs and companies helping out. We've got solar lamps, tarps, med kits. There's another $250,000 of aid going in. Amazon, DHL Logistics are helping out. Countries pledging for kit, food, rescue teams, etc. So the international community is definitely trying to help in one way or another. Hopefully we can get the wheels back on the wagon, because at the moment they're well and truly off, and a lot of people's lives have been turned upside down by nature. It does happen. So what are our current threats moving forward? So now we've got the storm out the way, we've recapped on what Hurricane Melissa brought to the party, but now what's next? There is definitely more risk still in country. So flash flooding, landslide risk persists, and that's due to the amount of rainfall and the storm surge that the country has experienced. It's ridiculous how much water's gone into that place. So that's still a massive risk. The big one, I would say, from my standpoint, eunyxus' standpoint, and I can speak on behalf of the business on this one, water contamination and disease outbreak is probably the highest risk there right now. There's waterborne diseases. We've got leptospirosis, cholera, cryptosporidiosis. These are obviously all tropical diseases and stuff. We have put out a leaflet, if you like. It's A4, and it's got these current disease risks on there, and it shows the signs and symptoms. Definitely please pass it around. I know comms are limited out there, but it might help identifying these things early. We can then start to think about getting aid as quick as possibly can, or some medical treatment. We've got vector-borne disease as well, spread through mosquitoes, and that's dengue fever. And we've also got waterborne and foodborne viral viruses. So we've got norovirus and gastroenteritis, horrible diseases. And, you know, some of them are really high risk, right? So that you don't really want to be living with them for too long. We've also got food insecurity for 2.8 million people. We've got prolonged infrastructure impact, people without power, comms, you know, all that sort of stuff. And we've got mental health, and we've got vulnerable population crisis. We've got people suffering from trauma because of deaths, injuries, and shock from the actual event itself, which probably isn't going to have been treated very well this far. There's 15,000 displaced persons in shelters. We've got devastated losses to business, etc. All of that compounds, especially when we start looking at the services for the elderly and our children. That's going to have a massive mental bear on our shoulders, and it's going to be difficult to shake off. So they're our top 5 risks in country for now. So just to recap on those: flash flooding, landslide risk. We've obviously got the disease risk, food insecurity. We did post a few days ago to say stock up on foods. We put a post on our YouTube. I don't know if many people have seen it. If you've not seen it, go and check it out. We did put on there, have food, have a week's worth of food. Even if it's tinned, it's just sustenance. It keeps you going. And we also mentioned clean water. 2 of the biggest problems I think that are going to have getting around the country right now, because obviously the impact that the water's had and it's how it's affected the roads, etc., is getting water and food around. And it's definitely something that we said stock up on a few days ago. We got that prolonged infrastructure disruption. 537,000 people without power, which is 70% of the country, or 77%. And then we've got the mental health problem as well. For those of you that are watching this, you're probably not in Jamaica, to be honest with you. If anyone is in Jamaica, then I feel for you, because it's not going to be an easy road to walk along over the next few weeks and months. It's going to be a bit of an uphill battle. Mental health wise, if we can keep ourselves fit mentally, we can overcome challenges, we can think properly. Things like water, food, we have to start looking at getting creative with that sort of stuff. I could make a video all about that on its own, but we just wanted to jump on just to give a bit of a recap of what's happened. Hopefully it's helpful. It just gives a bit of a picture of what's going on in the region and what the conditions are going to be like going forward. We all saw in the media around the world the impact that Hurricane Melissa had. We heard how strong it was, but there's definitely more to it than just the hurricane itself. But I'll leave you with that, guys. Nothing fancy today. We will monitor the situation. If we think of anything else that we can help out with, then we undoubtedly will. But we have got that picture, poster, PDF ready to go. I'll put a link below and you can go and click on it. You can see what the risks are now. That we've also posted on X about it, and I'll make sure we put a post in our YouTube channel about it as well. But outside of people in the Caribbean, because I know they're not okay, hope everyone else is doing really good. And until next time, stay safe, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.